So how can we know the way? And Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. Philip said, Lord, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us. Jesus answered, don't you know me, Philip, even after I've been among you such a long time? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Don't you believe that I am in the Father and that the Father is in me? These words I say to you, I do not speak on my own authority. Rather, it is the Father living in me who is doing his work. Believe me when I say that I am in the Father and the Father is in me, or at least believe on the evidence of the works themselves. Very truly, I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father. And I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it. So much to grab onto, and hopefully so much to believe to the point of changing our behavior. And I do want to highlight before we get there, when Jesus says in that fourth verse, you know the way to the place where I'm going. He is setting them up to make a point in a very, very teachable moment. When he says, you know the way to the place where I'm going, he knows he's speaking of himself, not something you go to Google Maps and get the directions for. He's speaking of himself when he says he's the way, and he makes that super, super clear to them. And so he says, as you look at me and hear me and see what I do, you're seeing and hearing the way. And when you look at me and hear what I say and see what I do, you're seeing and hearing the Father. That he is the expression of his Father. So what we'll look at are these 4 points that we can bring out from this passage. And I know there's a lot to fill in, and it looks maybe intimidating or longer than you might think it's going to be, but this should go quick as a relative term when it's me saying it. But we'll see, right? We'll see together. So Jesus prepares, and this is loaded in the setup here of saying it this way. It seems appropriate. Jesus prepares his disciples for his death and departure. That's what's beginning to happen here. Jesus is preparing his disciples for his death and his departure, because he's going to die and he's going to leave them. And you can only imagine what that was like for him as it was happening. That he died and now he's leaving. And of course, it was all in the plan. It was all in the story that God had already written. So Jesus prepares his disciples for his death and departure by, number one, assuring them that their hearts needn't be troubled. And connected with that, Paul says, afraid. Don't let your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. So, assuring them their hearts needn't be troubled or afraid. And I do want to distinguish, we'll make this point. He doesn't say their minds, but of course what gets to the heart, it first goes to the mind. And that's why we've got to be careful, not just because often what goes through our mind is triggered by what goes into our eyes and into our ears. So be careful of the eyes what you see, be careful of the ears what you hear, because it won't just reside in your mind, it goes straight to your heart. And he is saying that, and this is where the ultimate issue is, don't let your hearts be troubled or afraid. Oh, that's what it says in the first point. Note that he did not say their minds but their hearts. So, again, put yourself in their sandals instead of shoes. Put yourself in their sandals. Put yourself in that room. Just Jesus and his 11 of his first followers. One of his first followers had walked away. Knew what he's going to do here. Bring the Roman guards to arrest him. Betray him with a kiss. That's not what a kiss is for. And so when he's assuring them their hearts need to be troubled or afraid, again, that first verse, he says categorically, do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. This is the anchor that's going to hold them for all that's ahead. Do not let this happen. Because it is going to be tested. You're going to feel the experience of incredible trouble and lack of peace, turmoil, confusion. But he's saying, when all this comes down, don't let what's temporary, what's going on around you, solidify what could happen in your heart. Because if you let fear into your heart, and you let your heart be troubled, it's like pouring sand into your gas tank. The engine's just not going to run right. If you let this in, it's going to show up in everything. So don't let it happen. Don't be afraid. Do not be afraid. Don't let your heart be troubled. Because, again, we have the privilege of looking back on this. And we already know in the past tense what they had no clue about was in their future. They had no clue how quickly and how badly this was soon to go for them. They had no clue how quickly this was going to turn and how badly this was going to go. And because Jesus knew that, he said to them before that happened, don't let your heart be troubled. And I can only imagine how many times each one of them went back to and grabbed on to those words. He told us, don't let our hearts be troubled. Let's embrace those words. And I alluded to this earlier, maybe even already said it. The mind and the heart are both battlegrounds. The scriptures speak about guarding your heart and taking every thought captive in your mind. So the heart and the mind are inextricably linked. And it is important that in Philippians 4 it says, whatever is excellent, whatever is good, whatever is praiseworthy, you think of these things. Again, don't let bad thoughts take hold. Bad thoughts, wrong thoughts, lies, dark stuff from Satan. Don't let those thoughts move in. But because, again, those thoughts will find their way to your heart, and they will bring trouble. And the mind and the heart are both battlegrounds. The mind and the heart are very connected. But here's you see this clearly for a minute. The ultimate key is the heart. Because, and I don't know how it happens, and I was trying to think back at times in my life where I've experienced this, which is kind of weird. But there have been times, and some of you know, you listen to me, some of you every Sunday, I would not like to see what's going on in there when you're talking. But it's just, there's a lot spinning. And there have been times that there has been incredible, I guess the way to say it, traffic in my mind, but somehow or another, by God's grace right here, all is well. My heart is okay. By God's grace, my heart is okay. Right now, right here. But to experience a non-troubled heart, while I may be struggling in my mind with fear or worry and things like that. Because to address it here without addressing it here ultimately doesn't do the job. So he says, do not let your heart, not your mind, do not let your heart be troubled. And I would encourage you to think about times in your life where God has spoken to you through his word. Old Testament and New Testament. It's all inspired, all breathed by the Holy Spirit. And when you've heard God speak to you through the Bible, think about the times that's happened. And again, that is what's going on here. He is speaking to their hearts, through their minds. The heart is his target. Proverbs says, guard your heart, for from it flow the issues of life. I think that's Proverbs 4:23. Guard your heart, for from it flow the issues of life. Guard your mind too, but make sure you've got the ultimate sentries circling your heart so that it isn't troubled and isn't afraid. And be encouraged by knowing that as sure as God said to his disciples back then on that night, don't let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. Because here's the truth, and we sang a little bit about this morning in one of the songs, that this is an unshakable kingdom, and Jesus is an unchanging king. So this is the gospel, the story, the good news of Jesus Christ. It's the same as it's always been. It's never going to change. It always brings peace and comfort to anyone who receives the good news of Jesus Christ. That hasn't ever changed, and it will never change. While everything else in this world and our lives is constantly changing. Some in good ways and in pleasant ways, and some in bad ways and in hard ways. There's always things around us that are changing and would have the potential to trouble our hearts. But good news. All those changing things are going to keep on changing, but this gospel and this God and His grace, it's the same. Rock solid. Nothing is going to topple it. Nothing. No situation. Nothing anybody does. And so that's why it is important for you and I to grab onto God's Word and let Him speak to our hearts through His Word, not just our heads. Because there are people who know the Bible better than anybody in this room who are not Christians. They know what it says. They know what the Bible says, but they don't believe it and they don't live it. So it's got to get to the heart, not just the mind. So assuring them, He prepares His disciples for His death and His departure by assuring them their hearts need to be troubled or afraid. The second point this morning are the next 3 verses, 2 through 4. And the second point this morning is this. Promising He's preparing a place for them and will come back to get them, to bring them there. Again, I know there's a lot of words, so they're on the screen. Promising He's preparing a place for them and will come back. Long before Arnold Schwarzenegger grabbed onto that phrase, I'll be back. Jesus was the first one who said it with the ultimate meaning. He will come back to get them and bring them there. I'm going to go somewhere, I'm going to do something, I'm coming back to get you, we're going there together. That's exactly what He's saying. And this is really going to resonate for them when they see Him ascend into heaven after the resurrection. The resurrection was the first really, really, really big news. And then again, after the resurrection, and He's back. Oh, He's back, He's back. He's gone. Again, you can only imagine the emotional roller coaster for them. He's alive, He's alive. And then He leaves them. Of course, He didn't leave them alone, and that's a whole other message. But promising He's preparing a place for them and will come back to get them, to bring them there. And under that second point, I hope that we together can do this and understand this. Again, if you're in their sandals in that room and it's all like, what? They know he's different. They know there's this understanding that this is the consolation of Israel. This is the hope of the Gentiles. This is who the Old Testament was pointing to, that the Messiah will come. This is Him. And yet, right now in this upper room, this was undoubtedly both very comforting and extremely confusing to them. Like, why are you saying this now? Like, what does that have to do with anything? I think that could be a thought that went through their minds, don't you? What does this have to do with anything? What do you mean you're going away to prepare a place for us and then you can come and get us? What are you going away for? Again, because they have no clue what's going to happen and what that's all going to really mean. Of course, until it all folds out. So verses 2 through 4, let's look at those again. Verses 2 through 4. My Father's house has many rooms. The King James does not get that correct in the original translation. Every English translation, and again, having been there and seeing the implication of what it means of a house built, many rooms, not mansions. And my Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, what I have told you, that I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. You know the way to the place where I'm going. And again, when He says, you know the way to the place where I'm going, He's sitting on information they don't have by acknowledging you're looking at Him and you're hearing Him speak right now. Because He's soon to reveal to them, I am the way. It's not something you find on a map, it's a relationship you have. And so promising what He's promising them is a call for us to understand in a fresh way that they were going to really need this, especially after the crucifixion, and then the resurrection, and then the ascension. This is another thing they would have to cycle back to and remember his words. There'd be hardly any doubt that when they saw him ascend into heaven, that these words came back to their mind and their heart. When they saw him go, 40 days later after the resurrection, so this is several weeks when the ascension took place. But when they saw him rise up, and I mean, just like I don't know, and all we can do is speculate. Was it like or like if you release a helium balloon? I don't imagine it was zigzagging on the way up, but he just went up right off the planet and right up into heaven. And then if you've ever watched those balloons, you very oh no, I can't see it anymore. It's gone. And at that point, there's very little doubt that they would have thought, okay, he just wants to do what he's. Of course, it wasn't John 14:2-4 back then, but he's going to do what he just said. He's going away. He's just gone away. And again, the whole purpose of these words he speaks before everything comes unhinged and undone is so that their hearts won't be troubled. That's why, so their hearts won't be troubled. Understanding that they really were going to need this. And again, for all of us, we all have a date with our death. There will be a day and a place that you and I take our last breath in this life if Jesus doesn't come back for us. That's just reality. And so as we face that imminent reality, this should resonate in our hearts. Because the same way he went through death and the resurrection and then went to do that, he's going to bring us through death, and there will be a resurrection. And he will come and get us, and we will go to be with him forever. So again, there's a sense where when our death arrives, some of us may not know what even hits us, depending on how we die. If we die quickly, instantly, or if we, die slowly, however that happens. And I don't mean to bring the room down here, but to acknowledge that even the severity of that should not do anything right here. Because, yes, we're going to the grave, but we're going through the grave. I'm not staying there. You're not staying there, not if you're a Christian. No way. Because he's the resurrection and the life. That was in John chapter 11. Connect that to this reality too. They saw Lazarus rise from the dead. That would get your attention. And so, and also encourage their hope. So many rooms, and I acknowledge that, not many mansions. That's the word speaks of I guess, we won't know until we get there exactly the specifications of the layout and the design. But there's a sense where you would say this is one big house with many happy people, and they each have their own room. However that plays out, he's preparing rooms for us in his great house, and we will be a family together in this very same house. Because it does say, in my Father's house, not houses. I've been in large dorm rooms and in big hotels, just like some of you have, and it's like, all we can do is just like, what's this going to be like? You know what? We don't know what it's going to be like, but we do know that it's going to be. And that is part of the comfort that we should embrace with anticipation and joy. And then one last thought that came along as I was pondering this point is that, and it's very much connected to what I just said, sometimes we're not going to learn what we need to know till we get there. There's this phrase with the transformation of information where depending on who you are and what that information is, the phrase is a need-to-know basis. And apparently, there are some things we don't need to know as far as specifics concerning all this. We won't know until we get there. But once we get there, we'll know. It's just really exciting. But again, part of not having a troubled or a fearful heart is understanding. And in fact, there's a sense where as we are stranded in time, he's doing it right now. As we sit here, as I share this message, you listen to this, as we go through this day, that the preparation is happening. And I can only imagine what it's going to be like when we get there. All I know is it's going to be perfect. Whatever perfect is, it's going to be perfect. That's what it's going to be. and we'll find out when we get there. So the second point is he prepares his disciples for his death and departure by promising that he's preparing a place for them and will come back to get them to bring them there. Third point this morning, the longest part of the passage, is this. Affirming he's the way, truth, and life, while elevating the Father in his disclosure of him. That's kind of a verbose way to sum up those verses, but it's acknowledging that Jesus just puts that, and this is what part of what gets us as his followers in trouble. To say categorically, as C.S. Lewis said, he's either lying, or he's a lunatic, or he's the Lord. Those are your three options. I think you could make a case for the fourth option, that he never existed, if you want to go